It's been a while since our last coffee chat, but I'm feeling a bit introspective, so I guess here we go. I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and right about now, I don't know exactly today or next week or somewhere in this rough time period, I'm currently going through the high holidays, the Jewish high holidays, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. It's 10 days of repentance, forgiveness, and a whole process starting with Rosh Hashanah and going all the way to Yom Kippur that's meant to be almost a spiritual cleansing, so to speak. And whether you're religious or not, whether you're Jewish or not, whether you identify with these things and concepts in general, to me it just had me focusing on the nature of goals, the nature of progress for yourself on personal levels, on any level of different types of personal goals you might have for yourself, the nature of resets in our life, the nature of seeking that next moment, that that New Year's, that we're going to go ahead and do X, Y, and Z, our New Year's goals. We're going to start the diet at the beginning of the week. We're going to change our habits tomorrow. We constantly seek resets in our life. We constantly seek those moments in time that we seek out as when we're doing that thing, or that moment of attainment in some way, shape, or form, for better and for worse. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. For better and for worse, we often push things off until another block of time. We push things off until the next thing that's happening, whatever that thing might be. Again, New Year's goals are going to be a good example of that. New Year's goals that are unfortunately quickly taken upon yourself and then quickly forgotten too. Because I think there's pros and cons to resets. I think there's pros and cons. Oh, sorry, give me a second here. I forgot this. This is a coffee chat. This has nothing to do with board games. If you made it this far, I appreciate your perseverance. This has nothing to do with board games of any kind, way, shape, or form. Not even tangentially related. I probably will mention things about board games because they're an important part of my life, but this is really, really not about board games. This may not be for you, or it might be for you. Keep on going at your own risk. Things will be timestamped in case any particular section sounds spicy and interesting enough. But going back to that, for better and for worse, pros and cons, we push off the things we want to do until that next reset. And I think there are pros and cons to it. The inherent con is the diet starting tomorrow means you're never actually dieting. It means every single time you break that diet, that goal you have for yourself of losing 10 pounds, every single time you actually eat that cookie or go out and, get a dozen donuts when you should have gotten one, or whatever it is you're doing that breaks your diet. I'm speaking to somebody who has always been trying to lose weight my entire life. Since I've been in 8th grade, I've always struggled with my weight, and so I'm always mindful of what I eat. I'm either gaining or losing weight at any given moment in time. But if you allow yourself the concept of the diet starts tomorrow, then the first time you break your diet today, it's very easy to break your diet for the rest of the day because you'll get back on track tomorrow. This concept of yo-yo dieting is a very common concept within the dieting ecosystem. The idea that very often when you're actually focusing on losing weight, it is very easy to actually gain weight at the same time because of this yo-yo dieting. If you're just eating, you're just eating. But if you're dieting, then as soon as you break the diet, you're like, well, I may as well have X, Y, and Z, and we'll start the diet tomorrow. That point in time can be a hindrance. It can be a false goal, something that we allow ourselves the mindfulness of thinking, well, we'll just go ahead and do that. We'll just wait till the next thing. That's the downside of resets. But I think there's pros to it as well. I think there's benefits to the idea of having a moment in time. There's many moments in time. Again, some useful, some not. New Year's goals that are often forgotten, the diet starting tomorrow. Those are things where we use the moment in time. We use that next step into the future as an excuse to not do the thing today, or as an excuse to give ourselves that moment of focus that is quickly then lost. But there's also something cleansing about a reset. There's something cleansing about that next phase in your life, whatever it might be, the next time you do X, Y, and Z, whatever it might be, like the beginning of the week, when you move next, whatever it could be, or, not going to sleep on a fight, making up the next morning. There's all kinds of different concepts where a moment in time can be helpful to us. Because we crave moments in time. We crave points in time as moments of something that will happen. Both for the excuse and for the goal at the same time. To a certain extent, human beings strive for growth in general. To a certain extent, it's very hard for us to sit still. It's inherent in the nature of what we are, that we're always trying to strive for something more. Sometimes we make the mistake of attaching concepts like happiness to that something more. And I've talked about this in previous videos. In fact, I think the last coffee chat talked about this. The last coffee chat was all about negativity. But I think very often we make the mistake of attaching happiness to that next moment in growth. Again, growth could be anything. It could be personal, it could be business related, it could be happiness related, it could be any form of growth or thing that we're seeking. But we are not satisfied with the status quo. Sometimes we make the mistake of attaching that desire for more, that seeking for more. We sometimes make the mistake of attaching it to things that don't actually make us in any way more fulfilled. Whether it's buying that next toy on Amazon that shows up at your door and gives you a spark of happiness for about a day and a half before it's gone. This is where we can talk about board games. Because board games very much can fill that void of having your next Kickstarter show up, your next Game Nerds order show up, your next whatever show up. That certainly does give us a spark of joy until there are just 5 more games on our shelf, and now we have 5 more games. 3 of them on our shelf of shame, 2 of them on our permanent collection, and just, our happiness levels or our seeking more hasn't really changed. And sometimes we focus that growth in other directions. Directions that might be more beneficial, more longer lasting, but also sometimes they may or may not actually give us what we want. I think as a baseline, though, we are not satisfied with the status quo. And I think that's a good thing, but it's a good thing that comes with downsides. It's something that you have to know about humanity in general. About yourself, too. I mean, you might be different, by the way. You, as the individual watching this video, may well be different. But I think in general, human beings strive for growth. Human beings are not satisfied with the status quo. Human beings always want more. More can come in any number of different forms, but we are always seeking something else. It's almost inherent to our DNA. It's why people retire when they're 50 because they can afford to, and then before you know it, 3 years later, they're out of retirement and working again because work was a thing they had to do for a very, very long time until they stopped doing it because they thought that's what they wanted, and they realized that what they wanted was not sitting staring at a wall all day. We seek productivity, we seek growth, we seek things more than the things we thought we sought for a long time. I was watching a YouTube video this past week on I was watching a YouTube video about a YouTuber. I think his name is Borgs or Morgs or something like that. I'm sure many of you know who he is. I'm sure many of you don't. Some kid grew up on YouTube, became very popular when he was way too young, dropped out of school, and decided he was going to do YouTube for the rest of his life. And that lasted several years. And he did very well. Had 11 million subscribers, so definitely doing well. Not a question there. But eventually it got to a point where the question is, why was he doing what he was doing? At a very young age, he achieved every single thing that he wanted. At a very young age, he achieved anything many of us can spend our entire life seeking. That complete financial independence, a complete lack of needing to do anything. And unfortunately, it showed in who he was and what he was doing. Because he had a goal, he achieved that goal. He achieved that goal way too early, and then he was left aimlessly wandering because he didn't know what else to do. And I think that's something we have to be mindful of for ourselves. Something I've often said to my friends in general is I always want a lot of money, but I don't want infinite money. It's just a personal goal. I would love to have more money, but I always want more than what I have, because whenever you achieve everything you've had, it could be a little dangerous. Because when you achieve everything you want, you're kind of left with that open-ended question of, well, what do I want now? What do I want now? If I just got all these things, this is what I was working towards, then what do I want now? And it's a dangerous question. It's a dangerous question because it really pushes us to kind of seek the meaning of life. Not meaning of life for everyone, but the meaning of life for ourselves. If you finally achieved everything you wanted, what would be the next thing that you want? It's a scary concept. It's a scary, scary concept in general. It's something I had to struggle with a lot when I was seeking. When I was seeking to leave my job and I was seeking to do YouTube full time, it's a concept I had to struggle with a lot of what do I want and what do I think will happen next? Is this about money? Is it about happiness on a day-to-day basis? Is it about personal growth? And how long will those things be fulfilling in different ways? For me, one thing I've always sought is happiness. I've always chased happiness as a concept, but happiness within the question of what gives me happiness and how can I achieve that on a day-to-day basis and not on a long-term I need that next thing basis. The long-term I need the next thing basis only takes you so long. And they could be long goals. They could be bigger goals. You could be a question of, okay, great, I want to buy a bigger house. And for the record, I want to buy a bigger house. I would love to have an actual studio with like blocked off rooms where I can actually sit here and film and not worry about the footsteps coming downstairs in the morning right now and wondering if they're going to walk in or make enough background noise to disturb this video. That's a concept I live with on a daily basis. My studio is my basement. You know what I could do with a bigger house and soundproof rooms and a full game room set up in whatever room and not having to share that game table with my kids' homework? There's so many things I would love to have. And sure, hopefully one day I'll get them. But then what? What then? If that's the goal, if that's what I'm seeking, the question is what's next on that conversation? And so for me, I really had spent a long time. This whole YouTube thing is such a blessing to my life, such a blessing, because for a long time, well before I quit my job, I always had this goal of retiring when I was younger. Although younger didn't mean, now. Younger meant when I was 50 or whatever. I had a goal of retiring when I was younger, and a question I always had is, what do I do once I retire? Playing board games is great, but that kind of thing only takes you so far. We are growth-oriented as a people, as a culture, as human beings. We are growth-oriented. We seek more. And so the question I always had for myself is, if I retire, what am I going to do to give myself that seeking process, that growth mindset? And finding YouTube was incredible for me, because YouTube, what I'm doing right now, this whole content creation thing, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on Twitch, whether it's on Instagram, whatever platform it is or isn't on, it gives me something that is stupid but important at the same time. It allows me to always seek growth. Almost always. Unless I really, really become the very top of the board game scene and I'm the most subscribed to board game YouTuber, then sure, then it gets to a point where it's well, now what? You could try to become a larger YouTuber than anything else. There's always this weird concept, but being on YouTube, doing content creation within board games allows me to have two things that I'm very fortunate to have. It allows me to, first of all, be doing the thing that I like and enjoy on a day-to-day basis. But that's usually not enough. You need that growth mindset. And for me, it gave me the concept of, okay, great, well then I can focus on things that are stupid and don't matter, but they will give me that growth mindset. They'll allow me to appease that little part of my brain that just wants to do better all the time. And so things like subscriber count, viewer count, growing on another platform, starting a new initiative, these are all things related to my enjoyment of board games, my enjoyment of talking about board games, my enjoyment about these kinds of videos where I can actually have a conversation, but they allow me to do so while focusing on meaningless numbers that don't actually matter, but they appease that growth mindset. I was very fortunate to find YouTube as a proxy for actual retirement, because now I don't plan on retiring when I'm 50, and I plan on doing this for as long as I possibly can. I say that fully recognizing that I just talked about a YouTuber who achieved everything they wanted and then found themselves aimlessly wandering through life, so things might change. But the mindsets are important. You need goals for yourself. I think you really need goals. This is part of what midlife crises are, by the way. Midlife crises, to a certain extent, are the idea that you hit a certain point in your life and you kind of realize you either have or haven't achieved the things you're going for, and you still don't know what it is you actually care about or want. It's that aimless wandering of you were just on a treadmill for your whole life and there was no mindfulness around what you were doing or why. Or there was mindfulness and you haven't achieved it and you're halfway through your life and you're wondering why you bothered trying. I think that an awareness around this, an awareness around why we are the way we are, what we're doing, why we're doing, and are we achieving these things, I think these things are important. Because you need goals. You need goals for yourself. And something Rodney Smith talked about at times is he talked about the differences between goals you can actually achieve because they're within your power versus goals that you can't achieve. Rodney Smith and Watch It Played. Versus goals you can't achieve because they're goals that you can achieve because they are in your power to do versus goals that are outside your power. And so an example he gave within YouTube, because he was giving this advice to another content creator, is the difference between you can't control how many subscribers you have, you can't control how many viewers you have. You can control whether you are happy with the video you just put out, whether you are satisfied with the quality of it when you think it adds value to space. You can control how many videos you put out, how much content you produce, because that's something that you can do. And so you can set goals for yourself that are achievable. You can set goals that are actually realistic. This is a concept called SMART goals in general. SMART goals are a concept that I highly recommend to anyone who's doing any form of growth mindset in their life. But SMART goals are the idea of a goal that is specific, that's the S over there, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. And timely is always like done different ways, either timely, time bound, time based, time whatever it is. So again, SMART: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and relevant. Relevant, not realistic. Achievable is realistic. So attainable, whatever. Relevant, and then time based. And those are all different in things in the way each of those stands for something different. Each one represents a different concept. Specific is the idea that your goal should be very specific. It should not be, and again, I'll have to apply it to, let's say applying it to, I don't know, your work, okay? If you're applying it to your job, a specific goal is something better than I want to do better at work. It's I would like to complete this report, okay? That's what it is. Measurable is the idea that you can in some way quantify what you are doing, that it's not just vague. Again, going back to the whole, it's similar to the idea of specific, but it's measurable. You can actually achieve that. So how do you measure whether you completed the report? Well, you completed the report. It's fine. Attainable is the idea that it's realistic in some way, shape, and form. That's an attainable goal. It's something you can actually do. It is something that is not, again, going back to subscriber counts or viewers, you can't guarantee that you can get X subscribers. You could guarantee that you do X, Y, and Z. So attainable is something that is within the concept of a goal that is something you can do, something you can control, and something that is realistic. All those things at the same time. And then relevant is the idea that the goal is actually in some way actually achieving your purposes. That it's a goal that you want it to, that it should be helpful in some way to your goals. Sometimes we sit there and we go for these goals. Going to my own example of a fake goal, subscriber count is not a real goal for me. It's not actually a relevant goal. A relevant goal for me would be making sure that I can support myself financially within the YouTube space. Subscribers are just a fake goal I give myself if I need that growth mindset. If I ever run out of things that I actually want, then I'll always be able to say, well, now I want 2 million subscribers. I don't actually care about subscribers. To be very clear, I care about the subscribers. I don't care about the subscriber count, if that makes sense. And then time-based is the idea that in some way it is locked to a period of time. That you're not just doing a vague, I want to achieve X over whatever. That in some way it is within a reasonable time frame that you can measure, you can use, you can go for. The whole concept of SMART goals, when you distill the whole concept, it comes down to setting something that is realistic. That's the full concept. Realistic and specific enough. Instead, and also a very big concept of SMART goals is also that you break things down. Instead of saying, I want the promotion at work, you figure out the various things you can get that will help you towards the promotion, you break them down. If you're working on a larger project, instead of focusing on, I want to finish this large project, if you're remodeling your house, you don't say, I want to remodel my house. You say, the SMART goal would be, I'm remodeling the kitchen right now. You break it down as much as possible into things that are more specific, because it gives you more room for completion and for achieving what you're trying to do. And this is another whole tangent. We can do another whole tangent. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll do another conversation around task management in general. There are so many concepts around task management of how to actually achieve what you're trying to do and how to pace your time, balance your goals, different systems and processes you can use. We'll do another coffee chat sometime in task management. I highly recommend getting some form of task management awareness under your belt. There are many, many systems out there, but they will all help you in your personal life, your professional life, in so many different ways. We'll talk about that another time. But for right now, I want to focus on the way I've always looked at my own life. Because I've always broken my life into three stratas of the different types of goals I'm going for. And I'll explain why in a second. I'll explain why I've broken it down. To me, the first goal type that I generally have is happiness. I generally have always sought out happiness. Happiness in the day-to-day, not just in the long term. Happiness in tomorrow, I've said this before many times and I'll continue to say it. Happiness in the concept of, well, I'll be happy once I get X, Y, and Z. That's not happiness. That's lying to yourself. You have to seek out happiness in the day-to-day, in your moments today, or you're wasting your time. The thing that's going to change is not going to be the thing that makes you happy. If you haven't been happy until now, that's not going to be the magical switch that changes everything. But when I say seek out happiness, I don't mean seeking out the thing that will change. I mean structuring happiness into your life. I'll get back to some examples and concepts of what I mean by that. The second is business goals of some form of what are you doing as far as your business goals, your growth within your company, your whether if you're an entrepreneur, what you're doing next, how you're putting bread on your table, putting food on your table, how you're feeding your family, the concept of just general money and business and all those concepts that I think are important things to be aware of. And then lastly is personal growth. And for me, personal growth is very much funneled and attached to religion, but if you're not a religious person, it doesn't need to be. Personal growth is just any form of personal growth. We'll cover some examples shortly. And the reason I have those three structures is because the reason I have all three of those, I've always had all three of those as goals and things that I'm working on in my life. At any given time, I'm focusing on different aspects of those three stratospheres, three lanes, three concepts, topics, whatever they are, is because of the fact that on a starting baseline, as a religious person, I think it's important to have religious goals, to be doing better within my religion. There's no concept out there of just being perfect at your religion. Oh, hey, I'm religious, and therefore I do all these things right. No, not in the slightest. There's many things I do wrong. There's many concepts within religion that I do not practice the way I should. There's many things that I break at any given time. And religion is very often closely associated with many forms of personal growth. Cutting out any form of bad habits. Gossip would be just one great example. Maybe I gossip less in my life. Why? Because, well, religiously I believe I shouldn't, and also just on a personal level, it's probably good to not gossip. There are many concepts of religion that can be tied to personal growth. Personal growth could be anything like losing weight, losing those 10 pounds. It could be cutting out a bad habit, staying off your phone when it's late at night, trying to get that off your plate, calling your family or texting your brother more often. Any form of personal growth can go under this category, but I believe it's always useful and helpful to be growing as an individual. And so I'll often pick small lanes at any given time that I'm focusing on. Small lanes is the concept. It might be as simple as setting a 2-week trial, going back to SMART goals, so specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time-based. It might be as simple as setting a 2-week clock right now and saying for the next 2 weeks, I'm really focusing on not gossiping about others. That I don't want to talk negatively about others behind their back because it's easy and it's simple and it's fun, and it's fun to talk trash with your friends about your other friends, or not even about your other friends, but just even celebrities. Just talk trash about them. Who really cares? Let's go into it. Let's have a little fun. But it's, on a personal level, I think gossip is not helpful. Gossip with no intent. There's gossip with intent. There's a different kind of concept where you're having a constructive conversation where gossiping is relevant. But if it's not with intent, if it's just because it's fun and easy to talk trash about people, it's not great. I was watching a comedian yesterday, completely unrelated, but completely related, but not whatever. I was watching a short of a comedian yesterday, talking about how the money goes where people pay attention, and he was talking about shows like, well, I don't want to list names, so I won't name them. He's talking about various reality shows of different types that are all focused on the negative and the trash and the inherent nastiness of the interactions. And how that's where we get more TV because that's what people pay attention to, that's where the money is, and the TV follows the money. If you give your eyes, if you give your attention to the types of shows that are all focused around negativity and trash talk and family policies and all these like just icky things because it's fun to watch the train wreck, well then we're going to continue to create a culture and a society that puts more of that content in front of us because that's what we want to see. It is fun. Gossip, trash talk, it is fun. I'm not saying it's not fun. I'm saying it is fun. So maybe I set a 2-week period where I don't do that. Or I try to minimize it as much as possible. And this goes back to the whole concept of resetting. And I don't go with, well, I broke it now, so let's start again tomorrow. No, I really try heavily to not gossip as much as possible for 2 weeks. And I usually do pick 2 or 3 small habits or aspects of my life at a time and focus on those for a short time. And then I focus on the next thing. And then if I feel that I'm retreating, because you're setting habits, it takes a while to set habits. This is another great coffee talk about the nature of coffee chat, about the nature of habits in general and how to set a habit and how long it takes and the work. Lots of stuff on this. What's his name? Can't remember the author, but there's a fairly famous author who does a lot of talk on this stuff. But either way, we'll save that for another coffee chat. But the point is, once you have that muscle memory starting to build up, once you spend 2 to 4 weeks on a thing, it's a little easier to stop focusing on it. And now some of those habits creep into your day-to-day life. Now you're a little less likely to talk about things in general, and you focus on the next thing. And if you ever need that reset, you go back to the thing, and you constantly focus on degrees of personal growth. Because I think it's a good thing to grow as a human being. The second aspect is the business aspect. I think the business aspect is important too. You need to focus on that promotion, on that next job, and that next title. You need to focus, especially if you're someone who's growing a family. Because if you're someone who's growing a family, if you're getting married, if you're having kids, if you're going through that stage of life where your family size is slowly expanding, well, your income needs to slowly expand too. Otherwise, you're not going to make it. And so I think it's always important to also focus on business, to focus on how much money you have coming in, to focus on savings and retirement and all those things. Unless you want to be working until you're 85, you need to think about these things. You need to think about these concepts. You don't necessarily need to think about them today, but the earlier you think about them, the easier it is. The sooner you get that 401k started, the nature of compounding interest and all these concepts, another great coffee chat, we'll have that another time, the nature of these concepts means that the earlier you start on these things, even though it's less needed now, the more time you have to work less on these things. So I really should do a whole conversation around interest and numbers and things like that. Maybe I will. But I think having those business goals are important. Trying to grow is important. Trying to focus on whatever it is, whether it's your side hustle, whether it's the job you're at, whether it's your own personal thing, always having those side hustles and trying to work them into your life, or in some way, shape, and form, getting those extra hours so you can put that towards a savings account, trying to complete that extra project so you can go ahead and get that promotion and make a little more money. Having all these personal goals, not personal goals, these business related goals that help you grow within your business, I think they're very helpful. But I also think you can't focus on them too much. Going back to midlife crises, you want a good example of a midlife crisis, find the person who has spent their past 20 years of their life working 12 hours a day because they wanted to achieve something in their business life, and then one day they wake up and they're 47 and they realize that they are not better off than any of their fellow friends who have spent the past who knows how long working 8 hours a day. You can't throw your entire life into your business, because if you don't actually achieve the things you sought to achieve, it's going to be very depressing to one day wake up and realize you didn't spend time with your family, you didn't spend time with yourself, you didn't spend time being happy, you spent your time chasing something that never came to pass, and that is a very, very depressing thought. I think it's important to focus on your business, but I think it should be one facet of who you are, not the entire nature of what you seek. Which brings me to my last one. By the way, this wasn't intended, I'm just realizing this. I have a coffee unicorn on my shirt, so I'm chasing happiness right now. Which brings us to the last aspect, which is happiness. I've always focused on happiness as well, because personal growth, I think, is good for ourselves. It's good for who we are as people. Business growth is good for ourselves and our bank accounts and our long term, but you don't want to get lost in it because you can't guarantee achievement in it. And then lastly, we have happiness, which is the thing that I want on a day-to-day basis. And so I've always sought out happiness on a regular occurring basis. I've always sought it out in different ways. I've sought out happiness in the sense of having my coffee twice a day. I have a latte. I have a Revel espresso machine. I learned how to use, learned how to make coffee, and it makes delicious espressos. It saves me money, first of all, because I don't have to spend $6 on Starbucks every single day. But twice a day, in the morning and the afternoon, I have a coffee in my Ember mug. And keep in mind, Breville costs like $300-$400. The Ember mug costs $100. But I spent that once. Obviously, I'll have to eventually get them new, and I save myself that $6 a day, and I have delicious coffee that stays warm the entire time. I'd rather have this than a latte from Starbucks, easily. And I get to have this twice a day, every single day. And I nurse this coffee for an hour, a genuine hour whenever I have it. The Ember mug allows me to extend that coffee process from what would otherwise be a 20-minute coffee into an hour-long coffee that sits with me for the entire day. I do this in the morning and I do this in the afternoon. And I have a delicious time enjoying my coffee, slowly sipping it, and it just adds quality to my life. It's simple. It's easy. But you can find the small things. A big thing for me as well was date night. 3-4 years ago, I added date night to my life as well. And this is both happiness and personal growth, because I think it's good for your relationship in general. But I think that I added date night to my life, and now once a week we have date night. Every single Sunday night we have date night. We watch a movie, we grab some food, sometimes we play a board game. We play board games and other times as well, but a specific set time with my wife where we sit down together and spend time together. I look forward to date night every single week. I look forward to coffee twice a day. I have game night. I had game night for a long time. Before content creation shifted up the way I deal and interact with board games, I'm doing it on a more regular basis. But before content creation, I had game night for 7 years or whatever it was. I had game night on the table every single Thursday night for 7 years. And that was another moment within the week that I got to look forward to. As a religious Jew, I have Saturday off. I don't work on Saturday. From Friday night sunset to Saturday night sunset, I am for 25 hours, I am offline and just zenning out in the world. There's a longer conversation around what Saturday is, what I do, all those things, but it's away from work, it's away from computers. I'm not filming videos, I'm not doing anything. I'm playing games, I'm spending time with family and friends, I'm relaxing, I'm going to synagogue, I'm doing all these other things that are significantly more rewarding to me for that day. Saturday is another high point that I get to look forward to every single week. Find the moments within your week that you can look forward to. Find the moments within your day to look forward to. Do not look forward to your once-a-year vacation with your family, because, I'm not saying don't look forward to it, but looking forward to a thing that happens once a year is not the best way to seek out happiness. I think that it's too far apart. You need to find things on a daily, weekly, or regular basis that add happiness to your life. They don't have to be a big deal. They could be as simple as your coffee. But if you do so, then you're adding sparks of happiness throughout your day. You're adding sparks of happiness to your life. You're finding moments and times and opportunities to seek out happiness. This is something I talked about in the last coffee chat, the whole one on negativity, and the nature of things like gratitude journals or finding points in time, just finding ways and opportunities to be happy. But happiness does not mean trying to seek out the next thing you need to be happy. It means finding it within your life as your life is, not finding it in your life as your life will be. But I've always sought those things out. I've always sought out happiness, personal growth, and business at the same time, because human beings are growth oriented. Human beings want goals. Human beings want to achieve. But we're also primed to fail in certain ways. And so finding different things that we can work on, finding smart goals, finding ways that we can focus on losing the next 2 pounds. Don't focus on losing the next 40. Focus on any number of things that you can actually achieve, that you can actually do, because it will make you feel better. It will make you feel better as a person to just be moving forward. And it's not the happiness aspect. It makes you feel fulfilled. There's a difference between happiness and fulfillment. Those are different concepts. But if you're able to actually achieve things, you will feel more fulfilled, because we want to do better. We always want to do better in some way, shape, and form. This is an interesting, longer conversation about the nature of why we want to win. When you play a board game, why do you want to win? Why is it important to you? What aspect of your brain cares about that? It doesn't matter at all. There's not a prize at play. Why do you want to win? It's an interesting conversation that can tie into the nature of seeking more, of trying to do better, of personal growth. It ties into that while being completely related. Sometimes we have things we actually want. Sometimes we have things we seek out because we're searching for something we want and we haven't really figured it out just yet. And so closing this up, because I think it's been long enough, going back to the nature of resets. Right now, I'm in the moment in time that is likely the biggest reset in Jewish culture. Those high holidays, the moment of forgiveness, of setting new goals for yourself, very often focus on personal growth, not so much on the business and happiness, but focus on the personal growth aspect. But resets are useful. They allow us to pivot, to adjust, to sit there and figure out what it is that we have been failing at, what it is that we want for ourselves, and to in some way try to set those back into our life. Don't get lost in them. Don't allow yourself the opportunity to say tomorrow, 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 but they're still useful. You can use today to figure out what you would start if you were starting tomorrow, and then start it today instead. Resets can be useful. Moments in time can be useful. Goals of all kinds can be very helpful and useful to us. And so I don't know what you're working on in your life, but I wish you the best on whatever it is you are. There are many things out there that you can look for. Anything from TED Talks to Malcolm Gladwell to a million other resources out there that help you seek out improvement within your life. And most of us are going to be alive for a very long time. It may not seem like it in the grand scheme of things, but it feels like it in the moments. And so I think it's worth improving ourselves and our lives as much as possible within those years. Whether you have 50, 90, 120, whatever you have, I think it's worth constantly seeking to improve. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you have a good one.